man. We could talk Tesla a little bit here. I mean, the Tesla
Always
argument.
down to talk Tesla, but that's up to you. We could do. What are you feeling?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Tesla's been a fun one just because of all the recent announcements. So we see that stock flying up, which is really cool at the Berlin factory. The
Yeah.
question is, do you think they're going to get to their goal of 20 million cars a year by 2030? I mean, that's an ambitious goal, man.
So it is an ambitious goal. Obviously, they always set the bar real high, and some people call it overly optimistic. The way I see it is, I was reading a thread the other day about this. To have motivation and to keep going, you need a crazy big goal. That because once you hit your goal, then you relax and you become complacent. So I
Yeah,
think that the fact they have that huge goal of 20 million cars, it doesn't matter if they get there or not. The fact is, it'll make them get a lot further than they would have otherwise. Because I did notice when Elon was talking at the gig of Berlin yesterday when he gave the speech, I think he did say that they're shooting for 10 million now, and they were like, it's aggressive, but it's doable. And it's crazy because I was literally like reading through the what's it called, like the long-term report for Tesla that came out whatever 10 years ago, and that was their goal, 20 million by 2030. I think it's still possible, but I could definitely see 10 million being more realistic. And I've run the numbers on it. Like, this is what blows my mind is nothing else changes, right? Nothing changes with AI, full self-driving, the solar. Like, these are all industries in and of themselves that could blow up and give Tesla another trillion market cap. But even if none of that ever happens, for the naysayers, Tesla at the current rate, like their production, the amount of cars they're selling is scaling so fast. If they were to do 10 million by 2030, which I think is very possible, then they're going to bring in 400 billion in revenue, and 40% of that, or 30% probably, will be gross profit. I mean, we're talking about 150 billion in gross profit margin, just the automotive, just selling the cars that they already are.
yeah, but that's like the big problem with that too is when you kind of roll back to like the car sales alone, because then a lot of people keep saying, well, then if these car companies are trading at much lower valuation metrics, right? Because we're not talking about the tech side of it. I mean, you're seeing GM, like a lot of these other automakers trading between like the single digit PEs and stuff like that. And they're like, well, we're just going to price it off the auto business. Then the PE ratio needs to be a lot lower. Because that's the scary
That's
thing,
true.
right? Like you're almost gambling on that future, but I love it. I think the only thing that I'm betting on with Tesla that so many people underlooked when it came to Apple, came to Nike. It's just like, to be honest, at this point, if they can just do what they're doing as good as they're doing it, it's the branding power that you're paying for with the CEO that is only comparable to Steve Jobs. And I don't know why the guy gets so much disrespect and so much hate from people. But then again, Steve Jobs didn't. Steve Jobs was much more of an asshole from everybody that knew the
That's
guy,
true. It would
right?
be very interesting too if Steve Jobs was around today, if he would be so celebrated. He probably
He,
acted just like Elon did,
the guy
or
he
does.
would he'd be the richest man in the world right now if he was still alive. I think his net worth would be something like $500 billion or something like that with the
Wow.
ownerships that he had in the stock. But yeah, man, I think people so underappreciate the value of that branding. They're a kind of company that can drop a limited anything, sell out in a minute, and bank like any amount of money they want. They have no problem raising any capital at the drop of a dime. It's for as long as they plan on getting to Mars. Like their Mars plan is by like getting people there by like 2028. I think they're doing a Mars mission in 2026 or something, which is pretty ambitious. But like all of that stuff, that branding power just reiterates the insanity, right? It reminds me of how big basketball was with Air Jordans and that stuff. Like when that had the world's captivation and it inspired a whole generation. And like you said, nobody cares about Ferraris. Nobody cares about Lambos or Audis. Maybe a car enthusiast that's in his mid 30s or
Right.
boomer
And the
are
younger
like, oh, well, why would
generations,
anyone
yeah.
want electric? Like the motor and all this. It's like, yeah, who cares? The only thing that matters is the next generation that's going to be buying these products when they get their licenses, right? And not one of them gives a flying F unless they're real car enthusiasts about a Rolls Royce or any of that. The
Which is
true
a
luxury
definitely
is
a
Tesla.
it's definitely a niche, and it's a shrinking one. And yeah, you ask any younger, kid these days, or 20-year-old, like they all want Teslas. Like it's actually insane. No one wants a Corvette. They don't care about that stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know how you put a value on that, but if Nike and Apple have anything to say about it, they could come up with any product under the sun. So long as their fundamental product remains good, being the car, they could literally do anything from here. And the fact that they got energy storage, robotics, it's just like
Yeah.
basically just buy it for the branding and what they're doing with the vehicle and presume you're gambling in the future with anything else. And you just need one of those. One
Yeah.
of those to work out, you're in another multi-trillion-dollar market capped industry, and they could own like 10% of it in the US and just be printing money, right? So I mean, that's where people come up with the absurd like $5-10 trillion valuations on that company. But again, it's a lot of speculation. I think people should recognize it for that gamble, and they should buy it as a gamble, not as like a fundamental investment. But if you're going to gamble on something, highest degree of certainty of getting a return in the future, it's got to be Tesla. I don't know any other company that I'd bet on that could scale into that kind of branding. I mean, Elon's awesome, right? I mean, I love the guy. I want to put a get that photo. I have a meme of him where he's got the what was it the Bitcoin. He looks like he's a monk and he's holding the Doge
Oh
dog.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
got Mars in the background. I really want to get that framed. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing. The guy has the most dank memes. How could you not like him? And that'll add some value to
he's
Tesla.
actually a good guy. That's the crazy part, man. It's
Mhm.
like he's not an asshole, and like nobody like talks unrespectfully about the guy, and he has no filter, which just makes it even more brilliant.
Which, yeah, I mean, this is a whole other thing we could get into, but I think it's necessary to just have someone who's not just part of this just like the everyone telling you what to think and just no one objecting to anything. Like I think it's good whether you believe in what he's saying or not, and him being so controversial all the time. We need someone, or people, hopefully, like a group of people who are just like, you know, I think that's better for society to have like an actual like discourse back and forth.
He proves he is the exemplifier, like the symbol for why we need billionaires and why you shouldn't like try and just under like demean the rich and feel like they don't pay taxes or anything. It's just like I don't think I would ever end up in a position like that guy. I don't aspire to change industries. Like I'm not aspiring to multi-billion. Like I don't want to deal with the stress that guy's been through. He's lost like three wives, got like tons of children, no stability in his personal life. But if it wasn't for someone like that, there would be no talk of going to Mars. There would be no like, it changing. There, if it was literally not for Tesla, do you think we'd even be talking about electric vehicles right now and GM and Ford shifting into the
Right.
electric? Like, would
And
that even be a
yeah.
conversation? Would that catalyst existed without them after GM crushed it in like what was it, the 90s when they first came out with a commercial electric
Yeah, there
vehicle?
was a great documentary on it. I just watched recently. It's called "Who Killed the Electric Car?" Early 2000s. Mary Barra, GM, they actually led. They had the first electric car. Everyone loved it, and they forcibly, took them all back, destroyed them because they knew what was going to happen. It was going to cannibalize, the oil business.
Yeah, that and repairs, right? Like, I mean, most of their
And
money is
yeah,
going on repairs, oil changes, all that jazz. And actually, the CEO at the time literally stated recently that his biggest regret of ever running GM was canceling the electric vehicle. Like, if they could have just rode through that, like back then, I don't think the margins were as good. It was a little bit more complicated. They were more
yeah.
about income, revenue, dividends, and then they went bankrupt in 2008. Right, so it really showed how bad that
The
business
short
model
term
was.
thinking, the
Yeah,
disease of like Wall Street,
I
quarter
think
to
they were one of the
quarter, quarterly.
biggest bankruptcies in history, man. Like I don't, and people still act like it's a great company, and I laugh. I'm like, go back through their entire history, and the only time they were great was when they were the largest company in the U.S., which I think was from like what something before the 1980s, when they like just huge dominated autos were the big thing.
I think that I think there's a higher probability that GM and the legacies go bankrupt than it is Tesla becomes the biggest company in the world. And if they were to go bankrupt, I mean Tesla would have no competition then.
biggest
And
fear, man. This is everybody that I hear is bullish on Ford or GM. The biggest bear statement for those companies that people don't understand is they are 100% reliant on internal combustion engines to get them to the electrified future because they can't afford to do this transition like Tesla did overnight. It takes a very long and costly time, and they already have a crazy amount of debt. And like the CEOs have said that we need the sales from this. And now you're going into a period where like I mean, basically, it's just the cars right now are great. It's such a stupid problem. You can't get vehicles, so they can't manufacturing to scale the selling aspect of them. So vehicles are selling for more, so they are getting a little bit more margin, but revenues are dying. And then meanwhile, we're going to come out on the other side of this, maybe in the next 2 to 5 years, where vehicles are already going to be selling off, and nobody's going to want to buy an internal combustion engine because they know in 5 or 10 years of them owning it, it won't even have resale value. Like you won't even be able to trade it in for value because there won't be any demand for them. Everybody's going to want the electric vehicles, right? So there's going to be this period in time where I think you're going to see a huge sell-off and the demand for internal combustion engines is just going to fall off a cliff like the used vehicle market. Like people are just going to be like, why would I want this when for the same price I can get an electric vehicle? Like I'm not going to like, so if you're buying an internal combustion engine car today, at full price, I think the likelihood of it having any value in 5 years is going to be very, very slim. And if they don't do, it's like kind of a ballet right now for them. If they don't do this transition correctly, they're gonna like their stocks are just gonna get wrecked because they're gonna lose all their margins, and like their whole consumer demand is going to shrink because Tesla and these other EV companies are, taking the demand right now because they're first to market. Like I like things like Polestar, I think are very intriguing because any car company right now that is actually making an affordable electric
And
vehicle
they're
and
selling
bringing
a
it to,
good amount. Yep.
yeah, at production level, because Teslas are expensive, but if you can come out with something cheaper that maybe doesn't go as far and the battery's a little smaller, yes, somebody might pay 20 or 30 grand for that, right? So they could easily just slip in and steal
I think
demand.
Tesla, if anyone's going to be the first one to do a 20 or 30 grand car, though, it's going to be Tesla.
Maybe we'll see. Polestar's
I
got some
mean, yeah,
big
go ahead.
ambitions.
Yeah.
I mean, in
So
China, they're already doing it, right? Like China's already making really cheap $20,000 electric vehicles that are just for driving around
yeah,
short
but
distances.
those I feel like it's like a bathtub on wheels that like wouldn't get a in
Oh,
the
for
U.S. would
sure.
never get approved. Like it wouldn't be safe enough. And also just like for the style of driving there.
Well,
I
I
don't know.
think you're degrading their car companies a little too much,
Well, no,
considering. I
I'm
mean,
not saying no. I'm just saying the car, like specifically what you're talking about, like the ones that are great over there that will give Tesla a run for their money are on price parity with Tesla
yeah,
or are more expensive. I
yeah, for
don't think,
sure, for sure.
yeah, that's all I meant. Like, they
Yeah,
are
no,
making
for
great
sure.
cars. Obviously, Sandy Munro thinks that China, if anyone, will be the one to give Tesla a run for their money. But if China is giving Tesla a run for their money. If they're already better than Tesla, every other American, car company is gonna be 10 times more obsolete. They'll be long gone.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a lot to unpack from what you said there. But yeah, just getting back to like Tesla's stock and the company, we have to remember two different things. And I feel like depending how the next few months go with like if it gets worse or it gets better, if either way Tesla will be fine. If we have a recession, who's that really going to hurt? It'll hurt the legacy companies that are saddled with debt, and also when you factor in these rate increases. I mean, GM has like 100 billion. I got to double check. It's a lot of billions in debt. So how are they going to pay that down with the rising rate while they're trying to start this unprofitable EV business, and their cars keep catching on fire to top it all off. Like GM's really having the worst day. Ford I think might be all right, the way things are right now. But just looking forward, like so even if Tesla's PE did start to come down, I mean they're on track right now, depending how this 2022 goes, if they grow again. I mean their PE ratio, it's come down so much. I mean it was like 180 I think last year, and it could probably get to 60 by next year.
Yeah, and I think the other big falter too is right, like the tech side of the industry, because basically there's this technology on wheels, and when you look at the tech that's coming out with what like Ford even has on the road, even though they're making great vehicles, I feel like they're servicing a certain market that they've already kind of captured, and I don't know from a valuation and just a value metric when you have Google working with self-driving, Tesla on the cusp of self-driving. Like if you get a handful of companies that own that tech and are able to enable it to their consumers, which is something that Waymo doesn't do. That's something Tesla does. But I mean, if you can capture that, like I don't even see the point in why anybody would even consider buying a lower tech-based vehicle, because it's like people buying an iPhone versus Samsung. Everybody that uses Android knows that Apple has a way better system. I mean, did you look at like the last Microsoft Windows upgrade? They basically just copied the entire layout of Apple like Macs. Like I just laughed so hard. Like clearly
That's
Apple
what
has
they have
a
always done
yeah,
historically.
so I
Like
mean, it's
Microsoft just
clear from a
copies Apple.
user experience, man, technology wise. Like you look at how like Apple dominates that in the phone market, and if Tesla does that, or another, like you get even just a technology company that does that, whoever, whatever vehicle manufacturer owns that tech, like I don't see why they don't completely dissolve the rest of the market. Because again, look at Hertz, right? Like getting involved with Tesla. Like if self driving becomes a thing and they can adopt it, why would they even waste their time thinking about GM for any of these other companies? There's just no point. And then they just start, then you see the mass scale explosion, right? Because now everyone can turn this into another business. You see the big, like all these car companies, these valet services, they're just going to use Teslas or
And I
whatever other
think
company.
on top of all that, just if you just look at the trends, I mean, what are the biggest trends now? It's like sustainability, ESG, innovation, and Tesla hits all those. And the other
Yeah.
thing I think that's really interesting, and I don't know if it's the first time ever, but obviously one of very few companies that have been in this situation. Tesla's basically, the way I see it, is what ARK Invest wants to be, wants to invest in. Tesla is the innovation ETF in and of itself, you know.
Yeah.
And for the first time ever, you're not just investing in one startup that it's a great idea, but you know, getting to scale is what bankrupts the companies. Not only is it not that, it's 10 startups that actually are from a profitable business because they have these huge profit margins coming in from the vehicles that are light years ahead of everyone. So I just see like it continuing to succeed, and you just company in all the trends. It's just wild to think about. It makes me start to think that, you know, Stephen Mark Ryan solving the money problems, price targets are not as insane as they might seem. You know, if you're looking 10 years out.
Yeah, it's that's just so funny that you mentioned that. Just thinking about it, I'm like, maybe if ARK could have concentrated like 30% of their portfolio in Tesla and stopped trimming it when it goes up, and then just pick two or three other companies they believe in, like Block or something, they'd probably be way better off because you feel like they're trying to do what you said. Like they're basically wanting a portfolio like Tesla. So why not just make the vast majority of the portfolio Tesla? Because I feel like they're trying to replicate the same idea onto all these other companies. But do they really
They're just
need all
not
those
doing
other
it as good.
companies?
Exactly.
It's
They
like
yeah. And I know, like, you know, they're limited with the allocations and whatnot, and they have to, you know, abide by a whole other playing field. But yeah, when was ARK doing the best? When Tesla was number one, Square was up there, or Block number two, and now yeah, these stocks are shooting up, and they don't have the same exposure that they used to, and that's why ARK is, you know, not been doing as well
yeah,
as it used to.
from Growth Man and her portfolio, like I'd easily make a growth portfolio with like Coinbase, Tesla. Like Coinbase is probably one of it's such a weird stock to me. You ever look at it? It has more free
I gotta
cash flow
look
than
into it.
you got to
Yeah.
look at it. I like the inside of me needs to listen to an earnings call because every valuation metric on that company is a screaming buy to me, and the only risk that you're getting is crypto. But if you're bullish on even Bitcoin or crypto in general, like how do you not buy it? It's got a PE I think of like the low teens. It has more free cash flow than the New York Stock Exchange, trades at a lower valuation, and the growth rate on it is astronomical for what you're paying. I'm like it's just so nuts to me. I just look at it every time and I'm like, why am I not buying this? I'm like, I own Bitcoin, but should I own a bit of Coinbase as well, or should